Welcome back to Just Blazor Programming. Today we're going to be discussing what you are most vulnerable to as a software developer. Now, if you want to see more tech stuff, more Blazor tech things, then I have other videos available for you, and we will get more into the tech stuff in a different video. Not in this one. This one's going to be a little bit more non-technical and a little bit more freeform. So if you don't like that, then, I'm sorry for that. But don't worry, we'll return to our Blazor content soon enough. This is for those of you who are software developers, who are devoting your careers or trying to get into software development. Whatever you are in your career path, you will be most vulnerable to one of these forces. Now, I'm not talking about market forces because honestly, the market is looking pretty well for us developers. You know what I'm saying? Let's just switch to this real quick. Let me show up right here. Boom. So if you look at it here, this is the job outlook. So when you look for jobs, the good thing is to look at the pay, median pay versus the outlook of that job. And it says that we are projected to grow as software developers, quality assurance, blah, 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 stuff that we do, to grow 22% between 2020 and 2030, much faster than the average for all occupations, which is pretty awesome. That means that on average, you will not have too much trouble finding a job unless you are inexperienced or you're just starting out, basically, or unless you did something really bad. I don't know what you would have done, but don't commit crimes. Probably the thing I'll tell you. That's my advice. Don't commit crimes. And yeah, so the market looks pretty great. It doesn't really go into like different tech stacks, technologies, because at the end of the day, you have to figure that stuff out. And what will be the best tech stacks to go into changes periodically every couple 5 years or so. So in this channel, we focus on .NET stuff. We focus on Blazor specifically, but I do delve into other .NET things. And speaking of, if you can see up here, I'm going to bring up Unity in this one. Now, what Unity has to do with what I'm talking about is that recently it is gotten into a little bit of hot water with the developers who want to use Unity. If you don't know what's going on, basically Unity Software is buying a company called Iron Source, and Iron Source was known for making malware. Now, I know there's a Reddit page, so take this with a grain of salt, but from what I've known, this particular company was the company that made stuff that if you downloaded software, other software will get downloaded onto you without you knowing. Like you remember the days when you downloaded something and you have like a random browser stuck up here, like a random search bar just stuck up here. You have an extra one in there and you didn't want it, but it's there, and that's what they used to do. So it's basically malware, but it's adware, I guess, or whatever. Either way, it wasn't cool, and it really sucked. And for whatever reason, Unity 3D decides to partner with these people. And there was other stuff that's happening with Unity, including the CEO not being very cool to developers, calling them things that probably should have not called them, and just disparaging the people who use the software, so much so that if you look at the sentiment, people are basically saying that the direction of Unity is not to their liking, and they might be moving to a different engine, most likely Unreal, even though it doesn't use C#. I believe I think it uses C++ or something, but they are willing to get off of this software, all because of the news of how Unity is, the news that Unity is buying this, basically a malware creating company, the things that it's been saying, and basically the direction that it's been going, and other stuff too. I'm not going to get into this. This isn't a Unity channel, and other channels have gone into it more deeply, but the sentiment is the same, and it goes with the entire theme of my video. The whole theme of my video being what you're most vulnerable to. Now, these people have probably taken a lot of time to learn Unity, basically a tech stack for them, a game engine, built on whatever, I don't know. But basically you use C# most likely to build their games, and then they have Unity to build the game engine for that. So C# having a game engine devoted to itself was pretty good to have, but unfortunately now, due to recent things that have happened, they have to start thinking about whether or not it's worth staying in that tech stack, especially if they're joining some company that they don't know what direction they're going to take their games on, and the impact of that engine in the future, especially when it comes to making revenue. They could suffer making revenue because of the actual, the bad reputation they're basically buying. So that's just things to consider with your tech stack. And that is what makes you the most vulnerable. It's not going to be market forces really as a software developer, because I believe that software development is, according at least to a lot of statistics that I've read, not just the Bureau of Labor Statistics, but other places, will have a bright future as more and more jobs need more software development. The issue is what tech stack you go into. Now, tech stacks change all the time. In fact, some of you here are here on my channel because you want to learn a new tech stack, a new Blazor, because you probably have been using an older one, WPF Forms, maybe you're using Razor, maybe you're using something even older than that. But that is essentially what you're going to run into over time. or if something really crazy happens with your tech stack provider that makes you reconsider exactly whether or not you should continue using it. Now, I don't think Microsoft's going to fall into this. I think Microsoft is just another tech conglomerate that has a long history. They're not going to really get rid of their tech stack anytime soon. They're not going to go crazy and sell it off to Amazon yet, or Disney, someday maybe, but that day is not today, probably not tomorrow, not for a couple of years from now. So we'll be safe until then, hopefully. And there are other things you can do. There are other tech stacks that work well with it as well, including cloud stuff like not just Azure, but AWS. If you want to go into that, maybe Google Cloud, blah, blah, blah. You know what I'm saying. Anyways, what I'm telling you is that depending on how your tech stack is being managed by the larger corporation, you might want to reconsider using it. And sometimes things like this will happen where, maybe they get under bad management. Maybe another tech stack comes out that can beat that tech stack, and then we'll have competition, all that good stuff. So that's what makes you the most vulnerable, being basically married to one tech stack your entire life. But there are ways to mitigate that. One good way is if you get into a very flexible tech stack that allows you to move out into different technologies and different sectors of your job, or different sectors of development. So you have mobile development, you have web app development, which is the main thing that we do here as Blazor enthusiasts. And you have also native development, native Windows development, all that stuff. But they all use .NET and they all use C# basically. So as long as you have that, you can learn any other tech stack within the Microsoft realm. So as long as that entire ecosystem doesn't collapse on itself, you'll be fine. But if you find that, let's say, Razor is losing popularity, you can always jump onto Blazor. It is a little bit more to learn, but you are not losing you're not just learning a completely new thing. You have already the skills needed to go into and learning this stuff much easier than someone who's starting out completely brand new. Same thing with React and Angular. They both share, I think, Node.js. If you know Node.js, you can use these two spot languages differently. You could use TypeScript between them too. So if you know TypeScript, you could use either one in that form. And if you understand how SPA languages work, then you can use any of the SPA languages because you already understand the architecture more or less. With Blazor, it's a little bit different, especially when you come to things like state and whatever, but we'll get into that later. That's a little teaser of things to come. So what I'm saying is that if you want to be the least vulnerable to these changes, then the best thing you can do is find overlapping tech stack and overlapping technologies, essentially. As obvious as that may sound, if you're really weak in C# and you're relying on using like a front end language that isn't ubiquitous, then maybe you might want to consider getting more C# training, more C# knowledge in your belt, because C# is much more ubiquitous than, let's say, Razor. Because Razor, is built on using C#, but it's using like the Razor page language or whatever. But C# you could use with anything in .NET, essentially. For you guys using JavaScript, then the best thing you can do is use JavaScript, TypeScript, maybe go into Python or something. Python is a really good language to learn these days, because that is probably the most flexible of all the languages I've seen. And, I might get into that someday, but this is a Blazor channel, so we'll talk about in the context of a .NET ecosystem. So within this context, what is good to learn? Apart from Blazor, Razor, all that stuff, what can you do? C# obviously is number one. You want to learn that as best as you can, because with C# you are opening yourself up to other technologies within the .NET ecosystem. The other thing you want to do is probably get into Azure Cloud. Azure Cloud is a cloud, Microsoft's AWS basically. And if you can learn how to use Microsoft's Azure, you can learn Amazon's web services as well, because they both function basically the same way. You have your virtual machine somewhere in the cloud, and then you have to learn how to hook up things to it and then run and host software within it. Essentially, this is how it works on both of them. And you have you have languages that are devoted to making cloud agnostic things like Terraform, if you want to learn that. So you could develop on both AWS and Azure, but you still have to learn the fundamentals of cloud architecture. So until you get that straightened out, then you won't be able to really do that. But that is a good thing to learn nowadays, especially since everything's going to the cloud. Also, SPA languages on a highest level are more or less the same. You have a front end and a back end, and then you have a database somewhere. As long as you know how to do this hooking part, you could do any language you want. Sure, the nuances of those languages are going to be different, especially between Blazor and things like React and Angular, but you will have a better idea of how to apply them. And in your mind, you'll know that, okay, I know how these pages work. I know how to do transfer parameters between here and there. I know how to transfer data from the front end to the back end safely and do the best practices, because best practices do not change between any of these. You still need to do that. So essentially what I'm saying is that if you want to be as future-proof as possible, and if you want to be as the least vulnerable as you can when it comes to your career, then learning the fundamentals of whatever the tech stack is first and foremost. And then after that, learning which parts of your tech stack can overlap with other tech stacks. So if you ever need to, yeet out of there, you can just do that. It will cost you a little more because unfortunately, if you are on a software development path, you will always have to study, and there's no way around that, and you will never ever be able to rest, unfortunately. But hopefully, you'll feel better once you make all that money. So you'll have the job security, you have job growth, and you'll have a pretty decently high median pay. In exchange for that, you do have to continue learning, and there's no way around that. So, what can you do after that point? I do harp on this point a lot, and a few times here in usually these kinds of videos I always get into, that it's really up to you to keep your skills up to date, but doing it smartly will allow you to do this long term instead of burning out. So the smartest thing you can do is plan for your tech stack once you've already gotten good with it to see where you can overlap with other tech stacks just in case you need that in your back pocket. Anyways, look forward to my other videos, and if you want an actual tech video, right here is the tech video that you should watch, and I'll be out. Peace out, guys.